Muad'Dib means kangaroo mouse. An unusual war name for a Fremen. What if Paul Atreides were still alive?
Enough. Hello and welcome back. Today we're talking about Dune Part 2. We're talking spoiler reviews. So if you have not watched the movie, please consider going and watch the non-spoiler. I would really appreciate it. It helps the algorithm. Anywho, let's talk about this movie. I've been waiting to talk about this movie. I saw this movie on February 25th. Today is March 3rd. And I'm excited about this. So let's get into it without further ado. So I think it's really important here to talk about where this movie begins. So this movie begins basically 5 minutes after part 1 ends. And ultimately, so let's just start there. Paul Atreides, last time we left that man, unfortunately for him, House Atreides has fell, and he is very upset with the Harkonnen and the Emperor, amongst other people, and he met up with the Fremen. Well, now that he's hanging out with the Fremen, he is now pretty much in a situation where he's got to, I guess, earn his keep and convince people that he is worth keeping and not thrown out to the desert. Unfortunately for him, homegirl at the Fremen is like, yo, let the desert decide his fate. I find this man very compelling. I think he's a great character. I believe he ultimately is good, and specifically at the beginning of the movie. Let me be clear. I don't want y'all thinking that I'm crazy. Like, I think he's ultimately good at the beginning of the movie. I don't know that I believe that he is solely motivated only by fighting with the Fremen. I think there's a bit more to his character than that. I read it more as like he's they're the enemy of my enemy, therefore they're my friend for now, until it isn't. And what I mean by that is like it becomes a bit more than that, but it only seems to become a bit more than that after he's sent into the desert, and then the movie just progresses. We'll get more into that later. After that, let's talk about Lady Jessica and Reverend Mother. To me, personally, I really like the dynamic of Lady Jessica and Reverend Mother. They're not the same person, in my opinion. Lady Jessica's love for Paul is so well developed in this movie, and I find it that when that shift happens, Reverend Mother is so incredibly, noticeably manipulating Paul Atreides as opposed to Lady Jessica loving Paul Atreides as a son. And that really works for me. And I feel like if Rebecca Ferguson is not able to pull that off, that shift, I don't know how well this movie actually works. Like, I feel like that's such a pivotal character that has to be written and acted out so incredibly well that give the flowers to Rebecca Ferguson. Like, I've watched Dr. Sleep and she's great in it. And I've watched Mission Impossibles and she's great in those, amongst other things, but I've never seen her this good. Like, she is borderline Toni Collette Hereditary for me. Now, I will say, I think Toni Collette and Hereditary is better, but Rebecca Ferguson goes for it, and I think she ultimately makes connection with the ball and hits it out of the park. Like, she's great in this. Like, probably my personal favorite of this movie. Like, truly, I mean that sincerely. Let's talk about Chani and Paul. These are, by the way, these are a collection of ideas that I've had just floating around in my head that I wanted to talk about. Like, nothing in particular, just things that's in my head that I want to talk about more at length and more detail than what I did in my non-spoiler. I love what Denis decided to do with these two. I know that there are a lot of question marks with book readers, and I understand it. I honestly, to be completely fair with you all, I find it sad that, I'm happy that you have the book. I find it sad that you didn't get to experience this movie without the book, because I do think that the adaptation of all is where this movie is kind of like, you either really love some of the choices made in this movie or you really dislike the choices made in this movie. I hope that makes sense. For me, though, I love what they do with Chani and Paul. I find that the choices Denis decides to make to develop their story really works for me. A lot of their pivotal dialogue, such as, I will love you for as long as I breathe, or I will love you as long as you stay who you are. I think it works with sort of pseudo double entendre, in the sense of in the moment, you're like, oh my gosh, these two kids risen it up like crazy. It's great. They're great for each other. Really believe the relationship's developing. But then when you look at it back, when you know what's coming, when you've been there and done that and seen it before, I think that it allows for disconnection, right? Like, let's break that down. I will love you for as long as I breathe. Now, my wife brought up this idea that like he technically died. And I think he also said this line after that happened. I'm like, that's interesting. And then also when you look at take a closer look at what Zendaya said with, I will love you for as long as you stay who you are. I think she knows that there's a part of her that knows that there's a change coming. Like, I will get to that in a moment, but there's a part of her that knows that there's a change coming. I mean, she's very much aware of the prophecy, and I don't think as long as you stay who you are was that sent and or like casual use of those words. I think she knew what she was saying when she said it. And so when you look at it from that perspective, as much as it feels like, oh, these two kids are really in love with each other, it also feels like there's a deteriorating aspect of trust there, I think, which I find very, very, very compelling. Now, I'm going to get to this more in a moment, but I do wish there was more time here. We'll get there in a second, though. Hold that thought. Lisan al-Gaib. Though the moment we've all been waiting for, the thing that we want to talk about the most, I think. I love what Denis chooses to do here. And specifically, like, I think there's additions here with, like, for instance, like the prophecy of like maybe the use of desert springs. I think, our desert spring tears. I think you know where I'm going here. Earlier on in the film, after Paul gets his secret name, Paul asks Chani, what's your secret name? And she said, nothing. I don't like it. It's from this stupid prophecy. I'm butchering the quote, but something along the lines of that. I think if you look back at that through the perspective of knowing what's happening, I feel like there's maybe a bit of like that skepticism that she has that I find super interesting, that maybe might be rooted in that she knows that she's part of this prophecy and she doesn't want to be. She wants to just live a life and have a boyfriend she can love, right? Like, part of her skepticism is rooted in, am I part of the problem? Like, and ultimately to try to fight against that is to try to fight against the fundamentalist and to try to find a way to convince Paul not to make the choices he makes while still allowing him to make choices. And to me, that just really works. And again, I'm sad that some people don't get to experience it with that being the only thing but it works for me. Like, Zendaya really knocks this character out of the park, and I will say that until I stop breathing. Like, I think she's really great in this. Now, another compelling aspect of this whole Lisan al-Gaib thing, I think, is Stilgar. We've seen this person a million times, right? Like, the infatuation with it and the prophecy is both like incredibly sad and wholesome. And somehow Denis and Javier Bardem make it funny, but you feel guilty when you're laughing. Like, things that are coming are not good for him, not good for them, not good for what he believes. And somehow Javier Bardem and Denis really decisively capture that image that we've all seen a million times with people in different ways, with like different messianic things that we believe, or maybe we don't believe, or people we believe in and maybe we shouldn't trust. We've seen people like take up these mantles to elevate people that maybe we don't agree with. And if you don't find that compelling, I don't know what culture you're living in. Like, this stuff is really great, and I think they handle it so well. It's heartbreaking in the most innocent way, I think. And they capture hope, faith, and politics so incredibly well with that, I think. Now let's talk about the death of Paul Atreides. This felt so earned for me. I find the messianic false prophet thing all incredibly intriguing. Like, the idea that there was a prophecy planted I don't know how many years ago, but a long time ago, to maybe hopefully get a Bene Gesserit out of a situation if necessary, and then to see it all pseudo fall into place accidentally, or maybe not even accidentally, maybe just because people believe what they believe and they choose to make additions to that to confirm their biases. I think that's really intriguing. And the way Denis and Timothée Chalamet play this, I find it incredibly smart, clever, and just something that I will watch as much as like I've watched previous things. I mentioned Luke Skywalker before, but that's a great example. The way that people talk about the Luke Skywalker character, it's almost like they are afraid to take him out of the glass case because of what he means culturally to people. And I do think because of this movie, I think Paul Atreides is going to become something similar to that. Obviously, very different characters, right? Like, we're not talking about like morality here. Like, they're very different. But I think in terms of pop culture, I think Paul Atreides' name is going to be one that we see very often moving forward. And it's because of what this movie made that image to be. Now, all that being said, if more people read, I don't read as often as I should, I feel like the book would have done the same thing. But unfortunately, the movie has taken the book and turned it into this thing. And I think because of that, I know personally, I will be reading the book because now I'm intrigued. And I say that with complete compliments to Frank Herbert and the original Dune book, because this Paul Atreides character is phenomenal. One other thing that I want to talk about with the death of Paul Atreides, like the character, like obviously Timothée Chalamet lives in the movie, but he becomes Lisan al-Gaib. The water of life thing. So I'm a little confused here. I want to know your thoughts in the comments here. So please comment below what your thoughts are. I got to thinking about this. If we believe that the prophecy may or may not be true, which I tend to think it was planted and people have just kind of added and subtracted based on what they want to be true, right? About the prophecy, so they can endorse whoever they want to endorse as this person might be the prophet. The water of life thing, the whole thing about like, well, men can't take it or it's lethal to them. It's fatal to them. Is it? Do we know that? Like, is that factual? Because like, is there a chance that they maybe live in a world in which anyone could drink that? And or another thing to think about is like, is it like money? Does it just make you more of who you are? Like, I would be really interested to mine that idea. Like, I think that's really intriguing. And then there's another reveal made here. The Harkening heritage thing. I did not see this one coming. I did not see Lady Jessica and Paul Atreides being Harkonnen. Like, that caught me completely off guard. I mentioned in my review previously that this is Luke, or Darth Vader revealing to Luke he is his father, and that was not an accidental choice of words. 100% caught me off guard. It really worked for me. There is a moment there though too that's kind of blink it and you miss it, but basically, and I'm going to butcher this line because I don't remember it specifically, but so that's how we beat them, by becoming Harkonnen. Are you kidding me? Like, it's so like, it aligns so well with the progression of this movie. It works. And they just become, again, more of who they are, literally and figuratively. It just works. Now, finally, there's a couple of things in this movie. And before I get to them, I want to reiterate, I love this movie so much. It is quickly becoming maybe possibly one of my favorite movies ever. Like, I'm not joking. I love this movie so incredibly much. There are some flaws, and I've already referenced a couple of them. But unfortunately, I think the flaws are mostly pacing issues. And what I mean by this is that I will say this, there's flaws with an asterisk. Let me put it this way. I think the movie we've got, the full feature length film that we got, works as a full feature length film. And I don't necessarily, like, I feel these are more nitpicks than anything, but they are definitely problems in the movie. Let me be clear. Chani and Paul's relationship. I feel like you're just like, I hope they remember that Paul dreamed about Chani a lot in part 1, and we can just kind of have her wear a blue bandana and then say that in the coffee table book that the blue bandana meant that Chani really likes a guy, and end it there. And then allow actors just to act. Because they pulled it off. The actors pulled it off. Like, you believe the relationship. I do, though, think that there's things left on the table that it leaves a lot to be desired, right? Like, I don't know that we could maybe give them a little bit more room to breathe as actors. I think that ultimately Zendaya and Timothée Chalamet really knock it out of the park. You believe the relationship, but I think we could have, as audience members, maybe have gotten a bit more of that to watch. Paul going into the desert and then just fighting alongside the Freeman. This was a pretty glaring thing for me immediately when I watched it the first time. After the meeting with Stilgar and the other Freeman, when they're trying to decide what to do with the outsiders, they're like, well, you can get the woman, she can become the Reverend Mother, but the guy just let the desert decide his fate. And he goes into the desert, and then Chani's like, yo, what's up? Hello. After that, they're basically fighting together. And I feel like there's like three parts the way I view Paul Atreides' character. There's Paul Atreides. There's Muad Daib. I don't know how to pronounce that. Don't make fun of me. You don't either. Lisan Al Gaib, right? Like there's a transitional period there. And I feel like the middle one, the Muad Daib thing, you don't get to spend a lot of time there. And I think it's such an important part. Again, wholly, I think the movie's fine. It's great even, but I think it leaves a lot to be desired. And then last but not least, and I feel like I'm going to get hate in the comments, but I'm going to be honest. I love the final 30 minutes of this movie. I love it so much. But from the moment that Lisan Al Gaib walks into that sanctuary to the credits roll, there is no denying that there should be more things there. I feel like we just went at a sprint pace to get under 3 hours. And I wish personally as an audience fan, and then personally as a fan of this movie, and then finally personally as a fan of movies in general, I wish we'd have paid a little bit more close attention to the ending of this movie. And it works. Don't get me wrong. Like the sanctuary stuff works. The fade and Paul of it all works. The Godfather of it all works. All of those things work. And I think the movie ends on a note where you don't need a different movie. Empire Strikes Back as an example. Like people like to just make these blanket comments about like, well, movies shouldn't leave on a cliffhanger. Empire Strikes Back is my example, and I rest my case. That doesn't change the fact, though, I do believe the movie left a lot to be desired. I wish, and I don't know if there was any studio interference. I don't know if this was more Denny trimming fat than anything. I do wish we would have got a little bit more in some of these scenes, because I do think the movie maybe possibly could have been better. And it's a great movie. I love this movie. I've already pre-ordered the Steelbook. I've seen this movie 3 times already. I saw it February 25th. I saw it opening night, and then I saw it again yesterday. I love this thing. It's great. I just wish there was more. And maybe that's a selfish thing. That's very possible. Just being honest. So what are my expectations? I think Denny's probably about to double down. I think the Timothée Chalamet and Paul Atreides is about to go crazy. That's my expectations. And if they somehow pull that off in a way that I find compelling, I don't know how Denny makes a bad Dune 3 movie. I really don't. I think all of the pieces are in place. And oh, wait, one last flaw. I'm going to make this quick because we're at 20 minutes. Alia Atreides. I don't know where Denny goes from there, because I would think, based on the age that Anya Taylor-Joy maximum, the oldest I think she could be at, no, the youngest I think she could be at that age is minimum 15, right? So I don't know how you have her as that character and then make Dune Messiah and not have her in it. Is that a question y'all have asked yourself? Like, what's your expectation in the book? And I know this is a very, very massive book change, by the way. Is he seeing like far, far distant future of her like seeing the either, depending on what side you're on here, I guess, the consequences of what he done or the rewards of what he did? Like, where's your head at with that? Because I'm not really sure how you keep Timothée Chalamet in cast and then also have her at that age. Like, I don't know how that works. Anywho, I love this movie. This movie is great. I cannot wait to watch it again. I'm definitely going to watch it a 4th time in theaters. I've already bought the Blu-ray. Can't wait to see it. Let me know what you thought in the comments. This is a spoiler zone. So go nuts. Let's talk everything. I am super down. I will respond to as many comments as I can. Thank you all so much for the love on the previous video. I can't wait to see this movie again. It's really great. Like, subscribe, and comment. It really helps the algorithm, and I'm really thankful for everything y'all have done. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next time.